too fragile to move forward, and that has emboldened him to bring up a delay today.
Well, it's unconscionable. The reality is that Congress has the authority to determine the date of the election. It's fixed. Trump has no authority. He's trying to distract from the terrible economy. I mean, the economy fell on an annualized basis 32% on his watch, and he's just trying to rile up his base. But it's totally unconstitutional and illegal for him to be able to try to move the election date.
So ultimately, it's not really possible, is what you're saying. But he's been calling the mail-in ballots into question for quite some time now. So what do you say in response to that?
Well, it's a big concern. I mean, my concern is that he's going to try to be litigious, and even if the vice president is up by a significant amount, he could try to put this in the courts and to try to tarnish the integrity, the public trust in our electoral process. That's his strategy. I mean, he sees the same polls that everyone does, that he's down, significantly down, and so he's trying to cast doubt on the process and trying to suppress people from participating in the process.
And what are you hearing from the other side of the aisle? It's said that Republicans have no interest in the idea. One actually said that he was making a question, not really a statement, but ultimately this just can't happen by the Constitution as it is now.
It can't, and this is the president's strategy. When there's bad news, like today on a bad economic day, he says something outrageous to distract from that news. And he also tries to question the legitimacy of voting, because he doesn't want a high turnout. He doesn't want people voting by mail. He doesn't want all of the Americans who are opposed to him to turn out and vote. And so it's a deliberate voter suppression strategy.
It is strange he's not bringing up the legitimacy of his own election when there were mail-in ballots in place already.
That's a great point. And a lot of those mail ballots actually voted for him because he did better with the older demographic. Now, in this election, Joe Biden is winning with older voters, and that's because of his inept response to the pandemic and coronavirus. People understand that their health is at risk, their family's health is at risk, and unfortunately our economy has stalled because he's failed to get the virus under control.
Speaking of which, there's no official mask mandate federally, but local county health orders across the country have been either recommending or enforcing a face covering for Americans. So let's go back to your proposal. Why do you believe that it is necessary to provide masks for free for everyone, regardless of their immigration status?
Well, for two reasons. First, it sends a clear signal that this is something patriotic, that everyone needs to do it. With those masks would be information about the science, about how this is keeping your family safe and it's keeping your neighbors safe. So it's a reminder to people about their obligations. Second, there are a lot of workers who are going and doing essential work at Amazon fulfillment centers, at warehouses, and they aren't getting masks from their employers. So this is at least having 3 reusable masks will give them the basic PPE that they need to be safe.
And in this bill, you specifically mentioned that 3 masks be provided. They have to be comfortable and accessible, and that it would be mailed out by USPS. You criticize that we have enough for a $750 billion defense budget. And again, the highlight here is that the masks be given out at no cost. So how will that be funded?
Well, it would be a total cost to the Treasury of a few $1 billion. But as you pointed out, that's less than 1% of our defense budget. And we've lost 150,000 Americans. This is a national security issue. The thing that most Americans feel most threatened by right now is coronavirus. That's what they fear will hurt their families, hurt their parents, hurt their communities. And so I think it's a completely legitimate expense to spend less than 1% of our defense budget on making sure everyone wears masks, which is the biggest thing that people can do to help prevent the spread of this disease.
So you would divert funding from the defense budget for this cause?
Well, I personally think we need to divert the money from the defense budget. I've called for a 10% cut of the bloated budget. But even if you disagree with me on that, a few $1 billion is such a fraction of the trillions of dollars that we're spending on our relief that it should be part of the next stimulus bill.
And what about the accessibility to PPE? Do we even have enough supply to fulfill such a request?
We do with the production of the defense invocation of the Defense Production Act. We will have that. The president has said he's doing that, that they're producing enough masks. So we should make sure that everyone has those masks and that particularly the frontline workers have those masks that they need.
And that was one of the highlights in the bill specific to healthcare workers, providing them with both surgical masks and N95 masks.
Absolutely, because the surgical masks, which are critical for those who are working in healthcare facilities, those are still in short supply. Not everyone has them, and the federal government should make sure that they're getting distributed equally. And the thing about people say, well, why can't you just afford a mask? Well, first of all, a lot of workers can, especially at a time where people are unemployed and at a time where they already have such costs that it's a burden for people who are having a tough time with bills. But secondly, once you get something and you get the masks in your hand, you're going to be more likely to wear them. You're going to be more likely to comply.
So the Masks for All Act gives the federal government 14 days to figure it out and 30 days to mail them out using the U.S. Postal Service. But again, the question of supply, if there isn't enough being manufactured at this time, how can they meet that deadline if this passes? Would it require purchasing from abroad, as we've seen even happen here with California and our state legislatures?
Well, it could if there's no other supply, but I think the president could invoke the Defense Production Act to make sure that we are producing enough to give every American 3 masks who needs it. And if not, we certainly should look at overseas supplies as long as it's secure. I mean, I know that there were certain deals done in California that turned out not to be as good as they look. So it would have to be done with due diligence and with the appropriate oversight.
Okay, so ramp up.